Top 5 Best Heart Rate Monitor Watches. Number 5. Apple Watch Series 6. The Apple Watch Series 6 is a safe and very familiar update of Apple's smartwatch. If you'd like an Apple Watch, or if you had one with a few years back, this version is an upgrade. But for those of you who bought last year's model, it's actually quite difficult to find any obvious differences. Smartwatch. Apple's approach to smartwatches is one of the best in the industry, always provided you run an iPhone. However, because the watch is locked into those built-in functions such as hands-free for the phone, or walkie-talkie with other Apple Watches, all work flawlessly. At the same time, third-party apps are really fast both to launch and to display the information you want. On the other hand, Apple only allows its own music app for offline storage of music, so you either use that or have no music at all. New since last year, and also present in Series 6, is that the screen is always on. This is so that the watch worn on your arm will function as a normal watch without you having to do a drum solo on the screen to wake it up. The disadvantage is that the battery then needs to be charged at least once a day. And as a result of the new functions, this is even more of a stressful operation than it used to be. There's an app for that. Apple's attitude towards health, exercise, and activity differs a little from the industry standard. In the case of activity, this is a good thing. Instead of steps, which are actually quite difficult to find, it's all based on 3 rings to be filled: standing, moving and exercise. Filling the rings every day feels both more varied and motivating than the classic step goal, because in the case of the Apple Watch, it works more on the basis of what you do overall. In the case of health, on the other hand, things aren't so good. The attitude is very much that if there's nothing wrong, you don't need to be told anything. You can take your ECG and even measure the oxygen level in your blood, which is one great new feature for the Series 6. But at the same time, you don't get any of the values unless it seems as if something may be wrong. The health app in both the watch and on the iPhone is awfully messy. Viewing your history of what you've done and getting tips to improve your performance is almost impossible. Unfortunately, the same applies to the new sleep measurement. Sleep isn't an exact science, but the only thing you actually get out of Apple's sleep measurement is knowing when you fell asleep and what time the alarm clock rang in the morning. Light/deep sleep, nocturnal visits to the loo or any assessment of sleep quality, which Polar does brilliantly, is completely lacking. However, there are third-party apps that deal with sleep a bit better. Sleep mode also means you need to charge the watch an extra once a day so it doesn't run out during the night. Apps are also required for training. The basics are all there, but only the minimum requirements such as time, distance, and heart rate, and overall Apple's training modes are far too simple. This means you might quickly need to find a bunch of extra apps to measure different forms of exercise, but even then you'll have the same messy compilation of everything in Apple's Health app. When it comes to naming the very best smartwatch, none come close to the Apple Watch, for its built-in features and for how well the third-party apps work. A more open ecosystem for apps, however, wouldn't have hurt. When it comes to exercise and health, the activity measurement feels motivating and the watch is good at warning of irregularities in your health, but just about everything else feels messy, missing or is solved better via third-party apps. And then there was the thing with the battery life and the constant stress of having to charge it. Pros: good and accurate heart rate and step measurement. Fantastically good integration with the phone. Good built-in functions. Cons: battery life. Messy integration of exercise and health. Very basic sleep measurement. Coming in number 4. Garmin Venu SQ. What's the main visual difference between a smartwatch and a classic runner's watch? The screen, of course. And while the Apple Watch and others in that league have amazingly good screens, most of the watches from Garmin, Suunto, Polar and so on have rather boring ones. The reason is, of course, the battery life, where the latter are miles ahead. But what if the two worlds could be combined? The Garmin Venu SQ is Garmin's second attempt to do this. Square. Or at least the second with a color display. The Venu series is in the same niche as the company's Vivo watches, trying to bridge the distance between the runner's watch and the lifestyle watch. The Venu SQ and Venu SQ Music, identical other than support for music and wireless headphones, is a slimmed-down version of the previous round Venu with the OLED screen. Now the screen is of LCD type and also square. Overall, battery life is the same as on its big brother, but slightly shorter with GPS turned on. As usual, you get the whole package for measuring heart rate, steps, sleep, and so on, along with mobile payments, Spotify and some support for apps. You'll Mississippi out on the built-in altimeter and animations for yoga, amongst others, in this cheaper model. At the same time, we're happy to see that battery management has improved considerably, especially with always-on mode, which constantly displays the clock. Now we actually get a couple of days of battery life out of the watch, unlike the case with the Venu. Still a gym beast. The appearance is clearly more Apple Watch than Forerunner. But it's still Garmin under the surface. This means a lot more functions related to exercise than you'd expect at first glance. Various forms of structured workouts, loads of opportunities to create your own exercise sessions, and relatively stable analysis functions mean the watch shines on that front. We'd have liked to see the recovery functions and even more advanced training elements in the Forerunner and Fenix watches, but for most people this is already really advanced. The GPS and heart rate monitoring are of high quality too, and the GPS finds you very quickly before a workout. Garmin have also got significantly better at touchscreen interfaces. This isn't the most beautiful one in the world, but now it feels logical throughout, and as a backup for when you're wearing gloves there are two physical buttons. The Garmin Venu SQ is packed with functions for the price, including, unusually, Spotify support. At the same time, the design and screen will most suit someone who feels Garmin's normal watches are too old-fashioned. Pros: good heart rate and GPS measurement. Lots of functions for the price. Really good workout functions. Cons: very dull interface. More advanced analysis functions missing. Coming in number 3. Garmin Fenix 5X Plus. The Garmin Fenix 5X Plus represents pretty much everything Garmin can squeeze into a watch. But while the Fenix 5 Series X model offered new functions, the differences are less obvious in the 5 Plus series. All three watches in the series, Fenix 5 or 5S or 5X Plus, have support for maps and navigation, previously only available in the Fenix 5X, music playback, locally or via Spotify, mobile payments with Garmin Pay, integrated golf courses and improved battery life. This time the technical differences in the specification are limited to the values for acclimatization at high altitude. Yes, the differences really are that small. Instead, the Plus series is all about different sizes for different users. A larger size gives a better battery life, and the 5X Plus is clearly the best, and much better than its already persistent predecessor. Extra Everything Plus. Here you have everything built in. Maps for easier navigation, the screen is very small, and all of the tools for hiking, fishing and wilderness adventures that you can imagine. The Fenix series began as a wilderness watch rather than a multi-sport one. Music playback to Bluetooth headphones is built in, and the watch also supports Spotify's offline playlists now, with everything working surprisingly smooth. Garmin Pay works very well, and support for different cards and payment methods is starting to be really impressive. And of course, it includes a range of exercise modes, schedules, internal and external sensors, measurement points, and endless data for all types of training. If anything should turn out to be missing, Garmin's App Store is starting to be well equipped with exercise modes, dials and special exercise fields. It also has a solid package of activity tracker functions and a stable connection to your phone for notifications and exercise analysis. Substantial but still neat. In fact, there are more functions than most people will need, but they are there and only a touch of a button away. The only sour note among all these functions is that notifications from your mobile are still limited, but at least now there's the possibility to send pre-composed SMS responses. Everything's squeezed into one of Garmin's bigger watches with a circumference of 51 mm, the smaller models are 42 and 47 mm, respectively. That's quite big, but at the same time it's well designed and paradoxically feels quite neat. We rarely experienced the size of the watch as a problem. If you want the best battery life, trying to describe everything the Garmin Fenix 5X Plus offers would require much more space than we have here. But if you want a watch for all types of exercise that can also offer the most important functions in a smartwatch, it's hard to go wrong with this one. If it feels too big, you can choose one of the system models without losing any functions. Pros: good battery life, straightforward music management, an insane number of well-built functions. Cons: limited smartwatch functions, several major music services missing. Coming in number 2. Garmin Forerunner 945. The Garmin Forerunner 945 comes in exactly the same shell as its predecessor. The only differences are changes to a few detail colors, unfortunately for the worse. So the watch feels rather boring to begin with, but it certainly grows on you. So much so in fact, that we have no problems naming the Garmin Forerunner 945 as the best premium choice for its enormous range of useful functions. Music, swimming pulse, maps. What Garmin has done in practice is to take a Fenix 5 Plus and squeeze the entire package into the same neat form as the Forerunner 935. And they've also added to this a few new functions that seem to be only partially included in the older Fenix models. Music storage is built in, with support for Bluetooth headphones and offline lists from Spotify. This works in the same trouble-free way as other Garmin watches with this support, although music transfer is a little slow. Maps are now also included too. The navigation isn't exactly the most detailed, predictable or easy to use in a watch. But it exists, and if you don't have your phone with you, it's an exceptionally useful function. Because it's a multi-sport watch, you have support for every sport you could think of. What's new this time is that Garmin has also added support for measuring your pulse directly from the watch when you're swimming. Other manufacturers have had this, but now Garmin has squeezed it into their watches. It feels like the measurement is slightly more stable. And we didn't run into any problems when it comes to GPS accuracy and so on, just like we'd expect from Garmin. Neat format. Unlike the Fenix series, the Forerunner 945 is a significantly sportier design, which means that it perhaps won't fit all lifestyles. But simultaneously, it's relatively small and need to contain as many functions as it does. Of course, the slightly smaller format means that you don't have all the battery life in the world, particularly not if you have music playing. But without music, you certainly have enough battery life to run 1 or even 2 marathons. In addition to standard functions such as mobile notifications, step counting, sleep measurement and others, the watch includes better functions for measuring stress and values for how much your sleep and exercise affect your energy levels. This is what Garmin calls body battery. It isn't as detailed as what Polar have done with their Ignite watch, but it agrees extremely well with how the testers felt and is perfectly sufficient from an everyday perspective. The Garmin Forerunner 945 perhaps won't suit everyone given its design, and there are watches with a better battery life. But out of the more luxurious pulse watches on the market, it's really hard to find this combination of functions and size for a competing price to this one. And this makes the watch a worthy winner of our Best Premium Choice Award. Pros: all the training functions you need. Really good activity tracking. Good music player. Measures pulse during swimming too. Cons: music playback uses a lot of battery. Coming in number 1. Garmin Forerunner 245 Music. The Garmin Forerunner 245 takes a big step, pardon the pun, up from its more budget-focused predecessor and comes straight in as our best heart rate monitor watch of 2020. This neat watch doesn't have every function, but it has enough for us not to feel left out. Really, Garmin are playing a dangerous game by competing against their own more expensive watches. Neat format with everything but multi-sport. In a comparison with the almost twice as expensive sister model, the Forerunner 945, there's very little missing from a training perspective. There's no altitude meter, or tracking of swimming in open water, but it does support swimming in a pool. Because this is primarily a runner's watch, you don't have any easy way to quickly change between sports, such as triathlon sports. Nor do you receive the most advanced data that the more expensive models are able to collect, but at the same time, that's data most people can manage without. Running, cycling, swimming in a pool and a reasonable number of indoor activities are included in the watch. Together with simpler navigation, without a map, a free training program for beginner runners and also Garmin's new functions for showing other people where you are and if you've been in an accident, the exercise part feels rather complete. At the same time, you have pretty much the entire range of data, except for altitude, outside the exercise aspects, with steps, pulse, sleep, stress, recovery and much more to hand. The watch itself is also very compact and suitable for smaller wrists without feeling too big and bulky. Music eats up battery life. Of course, everything connects to Garmin's app, where the watch also has functions to reject calls with a message, something only more expensive models had previously. This is combined with increasingly competent notification handling from a smartphone and the option to install new apps and dials via Garmin's App Store. The major new feature is the inclusion of music in a slightly cheaper Garmin watch. Pop in an earbud and enjoy your run even more with this watch. You can choose either music files from your computer or offline playlists from services including Spotify. Synchronizing our Spotify playlists was very simple, if not lightning fast, and so far we haven't run into any problems connecting Bluetooth headphones to the watch. This is really useful if you want to have music on your run without having to take your phone with you, although you do need to take it with you to use the accident reporting function, even if you'll hopefully never need it. But a cheaper price and smaller size is reflected in the battery life. At least it comes with alarm functions so you can remember to charge it. Without music, you'd have to be an ultra runner for the watch to not off during an exercise session, and the same applies in normal watch mode. But with the music playing, it eats up at least 20% of the battery for just one run, which is understandable but worth bearing in mind. The Garmin Forerunner 245 Music is perfect for anyone doing different sports but doesn't need a dedicated multi-sport watch. The inclusion of a music player in this price class is welcome, and the Garmin Forerunner 245 is small and has enough functions to be named as our best heart rate monitor watch of 2020. Pros: neat format, good music player with Spotify, lots of exercise types. Cons: mediocre battery life when playing music.